What's up you guys, it's Aisling. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video I'm going to be doing a hugely requested video. I've been asked for close to a solid year to do a video like this, and I have a few of these videos on my channel from like years and years ago. I think my most recent one was about 2.5 years ago. I'm sorry about that, guys. It's been a long time. So I said I would do an updated version of this, and it is a breakdown of brushes, what brushes you need, what brushes I would recommend, affordable brushes, you know, higher end dupe brushes, and then some of the brushes like I would say not to scrimp on. So guys, if you're not already, I would love you to subscribe and thumbs up this video if you like kind of more informative type videos like this. Let me know what other ones you would like to see. But for now, if you're interested in seeing what brushes I recommend, then keep on watching. So I'm going to start with eyebrows, then we're going to do eyes and face. I'm also going to talk about two beauty tools as well. They're sponges, so I will be talking about them also. So before I do kind of get into the nitty gritty about the brushes, just pick whatever brushes you feel are going to suit your requirements. If you don't fill in your brows, then you're not going to need this brush. If you use a pencil to do your brows, you're not going to need this brush. If you don't apply foundation with a brush, then you're not going to need it. So tailor it to suit yourself. If you have similar brushes in your collection, then use those. I'm just giving you a guideline and then what brushes I think work best for the jobs that I like them to do. So that's why I'm going to be talking about a lot of brushes. And in the past, I've talked about maybe like 6 brushes I recommend for everybody. So I will do another one of those videos as well, but this is kind of like a little bit more in depth. A lot of brushes we're going to be talking about today, but you don't need all of them. Obviously, pick and choose what you need. So the first place I'm going to talk about is obviously the eyebrows. I recommend getting an angled brush that looks something similar to this. These angled brushes are probably by far the best brushes that I've ever used. I have one here from INGLOT. This is the 31T brush. Also, everything will be listed down below as well. If you're getting a bit overwhelmed with names and numbers of brushes, I will link it down below. And the second brush is a little bit more of an affordable one from ZOEVA. It's the 319 wing liner brush. So as you can see, both of these brushes are angled. They have multiple uses, guys. You don't have to use them through your brows, but I find for a brow gel, these are the best brushes for me. I find that I can get really fine strokes with them. I can get right through the tail of my brow, and I just feel like it fills in enough of my brow for me before I use a spoolie to brush through. I don't get too much product. I find that the strokes are really fine and even and equal, and I just really like the effect of both these brushes. You can also use this to do your wing liner. I don't do that with these brushes. Again, brushes are multi-purpose. If you prefer a brush like this to do your wing liner, then by all means go for it. But that is what I would recommend for filling in the brow, just to get really fine strokes. The ZOEVA one is obviously a lot more affordable than the INGLOT one. Both of them work really well. I've had this ZOEVA one for about 2, maybe 3 years. No problems with it whatsoever. I've had this INGLOT one, I'd say, from the beginning of time. It's so old. I've had it forever. I just love these for the brows. So a much more affordable option there, but they both do the exact same job. Now, this is a step that I take that you don't necessarily need to take yourself, but it is concealing underneath my brow and on top of my brows. So I love a brush like this, kind of like a smaller foundation brush. This is the F75 brush from Sigma. I will say you're going to see a lot of Sigma brushes in this because Sigma are by far my favorite brushes on the market. They do the most affordable, the best quality, the longest lasting brushes, and they have so many different brushes for different purposes. I think I have a code with Sigma. I'll leave it linked down below. I don't even know if it works anymore because I don't know. I don't know. I was affiliated with them at one stage, but if so, I have a discount code for 10% off Sigma. This brush is like a foundation brush, but it's a concealer brush. I use this to conceal around my eyebrows. I take a concealing product like this, which are cream concealers, and I use them to go around my brow and underneath my brow just to give a bit more of a detailed brow shape. Again, if you don't do that, I can hear Chewy snoring. If you keep hearing noises, people think it's my stomach growling all the time, but it's actually my dog snoring. It gets right around my brow and I can get really, really detailed with it. I also find that this brush is great for just cleaning up as well the outside corner here with just a bit of concealer. And also I do find it's great for going around the lip if you just go overboard with your lip liner, which happens to me all the time. I find that it's great just to get a bit of a sharper liner. But again, if you don't cream conceal, then you're probably not going to need this. You can also use this because it is synthetic for applying maybe cream products on the lid. You can spot conceal with this as well. So let's say you have a spot here and you just want to apply concealer to it, you can spot conceal with something like this as well. When I'm talking about synthetic brushes and natural hair brushes, I don't know if Sigma still uses goat hair. I think they've gone down more of the vegan route. So I think a lot of the Sigma brushes, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys would probably know more than I would, but I think that they have gone more down an ethical route. So a lot of the natural hairs are not horsehair or goat hair. I think that they make up their own like natural blend synthetically, if that makes sense. So if I'm talking about synthetic, I'm actually talking about synthetic fibers, and if I'm talking about natural, I'm talking about natural fibers. So I hope that makes sense. Synthetic haired brushes are best to use anything cream or liquid with, and natural fibers are best to use anything with powders. So I hope that makes sense while I'm going along. But again, that's a brilliant brush for just concealing. So next I'm going to talk about eye brushes, and I want to talk about eyeshadow application, and this is the only brush I would ever recommend for that job. I used to always love the MAC 239 brush, but it's super expensive, and I found an alternative from Sigma, which is the E57 brush, which looks like this. It is a small rounded brush. These are synthetic fiber, but they look natural and feel natural, so you can use both powder and cream with them, which is why I love these brushes so much. As you can see, it's really small and detailed, so it can get right onto the lid. Obviously you need smaller brushes for working on smaller areas. It can get really close to the lash line, and I find it's great at packing eyeshadow. It's a much smaller bristles to like that concealer brush I showed you, which means that you can get more detailed and closer to your lash line, closer to the crease, without spreading shadows in places that you don't want to put shadow. So that is why I love these brushes. I cannot recommend any other flat shader brush that I love as much as this, and this is the only one that gets the job done for me, and I have so many of these in my collection. Like, without a doubt, I definitely have about 5 or 6 of these. I love them, and I will repurchase so many of them because I always have one that's dirty. And it's not always a bad idea to have a smaller shader brush. The other one that I showed you there, it's wider and shorter, but this one is thinner and longer. This is actually a concealer brush, but I use it for the eye. It's the F70, and the reason I use it for the eye as well is because it's really long and it can get right into my inner corner, so I can pack eyeshadow in there, and it just gives my inner corner a bit of a brighter effect. And I can also get right underneath my brow, and again, it can give my brow a much cleaner effect when I'm applying eyeshadow, whereas something like this can just be like, it still does the job, but it can be just a little bit messier for me. So I do really like a brush like this as well, but again, that's all down to personal preference if you want one. So that's the F70 beside the E56 brush. So you can see that they are slightly different. This is a synthetic fiber brush as well, so you can use powders and cream products. Next I'm going to talk about blending brushes. Look how many blending brushes I have. I'm not going to talk about all of these, guys, so don't get overwhelmed. These are just in my everyday collection. Some of these are still stained. They're wet because I did try and wash them, like spot clean them. I washed all my brushes intensely over the weekend, but I've been doing makeup all week long because I'm trying to pre-film a lot of content for you guys. So some of these brushes look really stained because I've used them and I spot cleaned them and it just didn't clean everything out of them. Anyway, I'm going to talk about blending brushes. So what you would use a flat shader brush for is to apply shadow to the eye. So you're packing a lot of concentration onto the lid. So you're going to be packing eyeshadow onto the lid. Using a blending brush is something you would use to either blend that shadow out that you initially packed down with a flat shader brush, or to apply eyeshadow a little bit more finely to the area. Because these bristles are more frayed out, they're not as short and dense and flat. They're more like barrel shaped and rounded. It means that they can blend in through the crease, blend out any work that you've done on the lid, and just make your eyeshadow look a little bit more seamless. This is what makes your eyeshadow look a little bit more polished and not as like it's just plonked onto the eyelid. This makes it look a bit more blended and polished. I would use all 3 of these brushes to do the exact same thing because they're all basically the same brush. 2 of these are the ZOEVA 228 Luxe Crease Brush, and then I have an INGLOT 46SS brush. They are basically all the same brushes. They are a bit more fluffy and frayed out, as you can kind of see, which means that they are great at blending through the crease. They're great at blending out any eyeshadow and making your eyeshadow look a bit more seamless and polished on the eye. And again, for packing eyeshadow onto the outer corner and just maybe dispersing it. So I would recommend either one or the other of those brushes. So either the 288 or the INGLOT brush. They're both the same, but I prefer the ZOEVA one. It's just much more affordable and it does just fantastic work. So again, a blending brush for blending out your crease or applying a wash of colour. It's not for packing eyeshadow on or creating a huge amount of intensity, because obviously the bristles are a bit more sprayed. So you're probably saying, if I have one blending brush, why do I need so many? Believe me, during a makeup look you could probably go through 3 or 4 blending crease brushes, because I do. Maybe you pick up different shadows, maybe you don't want to mix shades in, or maybe you're using them for different work. So I think that blending brushes, you cannot have enough of them. So the other 5 brushes I have are basically the same thing. The Sigma E25 are these 2 brushes here. They're both the same brush. I absolutely love these, and I'm going to talk about these more so than any of the other brushes. The other alternatives I have for those brushes would be the MAC 217 and then the Morphe JH33. They all do the same. All these 4 brushes do the exact same, but I'm just going to talk about the Sigma ones because I prefer them. So these Sigma brushes are more of a synthetic hair. They're also shorter and they're much more controlled. They're not as sprayed out as the last one. They are great at getting right into the crease, and they will pack on a lot of intensity because the tip is quite dense on them. So it's a little bit more of a denser tip. So it's great at getting right into the crease and applying eyeshadow. And then you can blend with the same brush. Where the other brush I talked about before, the ZOEVA 228 brush, is more for blending and dispersed shadow. This is more for concentration and blending at the same time. So I would also blend the crease out with this as well. So you can use these for a multitude of different jobs on the eye, but I just prefer these to blend and apply shadows. So you can see that this is definitely more flat. It's not as round as the previous brush, which kind of goes round. This one is more pinched, so it means that you can get more detailed work and you can also blend at the same time. So that's why I include them. However, I do also recommend an E27 brush, which is just a smaller version of the E25. It's much more detailed, and I love this for blending out my lower lash line. I'll apply shadow on and I will go in with this and blend it out because it is a little bit more of a smaller tip. It's shaped exactly the same, it's just a smaller head on it, that's all. And again, you could use this for blending out wing liner, blending out the outer corner. I love it for a multitude of different reasons, but I just can't have enough blending brushes. Definitely I'd recommend a more fluffy blending brush, a more dense blending brush, and then a more detailed blending brush. So I think after those 3 you probably can add yourself what you might think you need, but I just like to have these brushes and multiples of them for different eye looks, and even if one is dirty then I can use a different one. So that's why I love them so much. The E27 and the Jaclyn Hill one that I talked about, they do exactly the same work. So you pack on and you blend with these just the same as the other brush I talked about from Sigma, but I don't know, I don't pick them up as often. I just still have them in my makeup bag because I love them, but like I don't pick them up as often as those Sigma ones. And next I want to talk about more detailed work. This Morphe Jaclyn Hill, this is the JH39 brush. It's a really small little rounded top brush. It's great for getting right under the lower lash line, like scooping your brush right in there. And also I find it's great at applying glitters to the lid if you just want to disperse them out. I find it great for getting into the inner tear duct, under the brow. I love this brush for a multitude of different purposes. I don't have one use for it, but it is another option if you wanted just more detailing and detailed work on the eye. And the final eye brush that I cannot live without is a liquid liner brush. So this is to use gel or liquid liners or whatever you might be doing to wing out. The reason I use this one is because it's way smaller than the original one I showed you, because it is so much smaller. You can see that there. I used to use a fine tip to do my wing liner, but I don't find that I get as much control with it as I do with this liner. And this is the E06 brush from Sigma. It is just one of the best liner brushes. The only thing I will say about it, if you're using gel liner, make sure you clean it after you use it every single time. This is not something you can let product go hard in because it will destroy the bristles. Same with this. I would always clean it out after every single use, but that is one of the best liner brushes ever. And you can use it in the waterline as well, and you can use it on the tight line. You can use it to wing your liner out. You get so much control with this way more than I find with a brush like this. And obviously you can add to your collection as you're going along. Like there are brushes like this one here that I love, the ZOEVA 231. This is the petite crease brush. Again, I find that it's great, just like that E27 brush from Sigma, at getting right into the crease, packing on shadow. So you don't necessarily need it, but it is another option. Also something like this is the 241 Precise Smudger brush from ZOEVA. Again, you can smudge shadow underneath the lower lash line with this. I don't really use it for anything other than that. There are options that if you want to add to your collection you can do, but they're not necessarily requirements. And I think that's basically all I would recommend for eye brushes. So now I'm going to move on to the face, and I have a lot of brushes again for the face, but not like a huge amount, again depending on what you like. So the first brush I would highly recommend is if you're interested in any foundation brush ever, you have to get this one. This is the Sigma F80 brush. This is a flat top kabuki brush, and it is one of the best brushes on the market for buffing in foundation. So some people prefer sponges, some people prefer brushes. If you're into brushes and this is kind of calling your name, I tell you, you will not be disappointed with it. It airbrushes your foundation in. It's super quick, super easy. It buffs it into the skin. It doesn't lift up skin or anything like that. I know that sounds gross, but some foundation brushes can kind of abrade the skin. The bristles on this are super soft. They are synthetic, so you can use them with cream products, and they are just easy to move on the skin. I cannot express how much I love this brush. It's one of the best ones on the market, and I don't use it often enough because I prefer to use a sponge and a different type of brush, which I'll talk about in a moment. But this is a high requirement of mine. You need to have this. Everybody needs a brush like this. You don't need to get it from Sigma, but I just find that Sigma brushes last the longest and they're very well priced. So what I use to apply my foundation, now this is super grubby, sorry about that. Like I said, I did wash my brushes, but I've been applying makeup all week. This is a flat paddle brush, and this is called the F60. This brush is designed for foundation. This is the OG foundation brush. This is like one of the first foundation brushes I ever had. I think this actual particular brush is about 6 years old. I have it forever and I've used it for years and washed it, and it washes well, and it's still living to tell the tale. I have one from MAC as well, but I just prefer the shape of this one. So it is flat, you can see that on the side, and then it's wide. So it's more of like a paddle. It's great for what I say, painting on foundation. So I usually paint my foundation onto my face with this, and then I will go in with the sponge and blend it out. I'll talk about sponges in a minute. So I absolutely love to just use this to apply all my foundation, and I'm not really precise with where I apply it at. I just like paint it on. I just make sure I can get all around my face, all around my nose, around my mouth, around my brow area. It just gets into the detailed areas of my face that no other brush can. And then there might be like streaks left on my face, but then I go in with a sponge to blend it all out, and this is just the best way of me getting foundation onto my face quickly without having to like buff it in and work on the foundation, because I use a sponge. And I have to talk about the sponge now, because if I don't, I'll forget. This is the EX1 sponge. Mine's filthy because I just used it like almost like an hour ago when I applied my foundation. But this is great for once the foundation is on the face, bounce this on my face over where the foundation has been applied, and it just blends it into the skin. It makes it look seamless, airbrushed. So it's up to your personal preference whether you prefer a sponge or prefer a brush. This sponge is one of the best sponges I have ever used, and it's from EX1. I love the Beauty Blender, but I think it's been replaced by this. I just love how easy this is to use and how it just makes my foundation look airbrushed. So that's why I use a paddle brush first and then go in with a sponge. It might be too many extra steps for you guys, but I'm just letting you know what I do. And now I want to talk about powder brush. So I generally use two different powder brushes. The first powder brush I use is quite strange, but it is this one here. It's actually a highlighting brush, the Luxie 522 tapered highlighter brush. So it's used for placing highlighter, but I don't use it for that. I use it for loose powder, and I press this into my loose powder, smush it into the lid, press it onto my skin, and just apply a light wash of powder so that I'm not too powdery, but everything is set into place. This brush is just fantastic for all that work, and I love it. Again, it's a highlighting brush, so you can use it for a multitude of different reasons, but I do really recommend a brush like this if you like to use loose powder. Believe me, it's a game changer. If you like to use pressed powders, then I would recommend the e.l.f. powder brush. I've used this for so long, guys. If you've been on my channel for all those years, you will probably know this brush because it was the only brush I ever used for powder. I use this to apply the powder, and then I will press it onto the skin. I prefer to press my powders onto my skin than buffing or doing anything like that. I just feel like I get a nice wash of powder, and it also sets my face without like lifting or moving my foundation underneath. And I love those two brushes for that reason. For bronzer, I like a brush like this. This is the MAC 109 brush. So that's a bit more on the expensive side. I think that brush itself maybe like maybe 50 euro, 40 euro. So I do recommend a brush like this from Sigma, the F05 brush. It is quite similar. Mine's just frayed out because it's older. It does the exact same thing, and it's great at just getting right under the contours of my cheeks and just blending out my contour. Again, you can use something like this to do your contour. You can use a more angled brush. You can use whatever you want, but they're just the types of brushes I like to contour with. If you like to bronze, I recommend a big fluffy brush because it just disperses bronzer all over the face, and it's big and full. Again, it's a great brush. So this brush is the INGLOT 36 BJF brush. There's also loads of Sigma equivalents. I have about 5 of them up there, so I would recommend tons of them. I'll leave a link to a more affordable one down below. But this brush is great for just dispersing lots of powder. It's also great for working on the chest as well if you want to place some bronzer down there, because it's just a great big fluffy powder brush, and I feel like every collection needs this. You can also clean that off and then use it to apply powder to the face. Just a good powder brush like this is something that everybody needs, and I just love the shape of this, and I love how it performs on my skin. And then last but not least is a blush brush. I have so many here. I use sometimes a dual fiber stippling brush like this to apply my blush, especially cream products, because it is dual fibered, so it has synthetic hairs in it. You can also use something like this for foundation as well. See what I mean? A multitude different uses. I personally at the moment am preferring a brush like this. This is actually from Wet n Wild. I have no idea what this brush is. It's like a unicorn horn on it, and I don't know where I got it or how I came about to have it, but this is great at placing my blush onto the apples on my cheeks and bringing it up underneath. I love the shape of this brush, love everything about it. It kind of reminds me of my MAC 168 brush. It is a 168. It's quite similar in shape. It just doesn't kick up quite as high on the corner. I don't know if you guys can see that there. But I definitely like this brush best for blush. You can use whatever brush you feel for blush. Whatever one applies the blush the way you like it, I would say go with it. And then I have a couple of honourable mention brushes. The first one is obviously this one here, which you've seen for a million years on my channel. This is the setting brush, where I use this to set a powder underneath my eye. And I love this just to set underneath my eye because it's really small and detailed. Again, you don't have to get a brush like that if you don't set underneath the eye with a powder. Maybe you bake underneath the eye, whatever you may do, but it is a really, really, really good brush, and it's super affordable. These two brushes are honorable mentions for me because I cream contour. If you don't cream contour, you're not going to care. You probably won't want these brushes, but both of these, they're filthy as well. Both of these brushes are from Sigma. This is the Chisel and Trim Contour Brush, the F77, and this one is the F15. It's a dual fiber brush. It's a powder brush actually. You can use this again for blush as well, but I use it to cream contour and blend my cream contour into the skin. I use this one just to apply cream contour, and then I use that one just to buff it into the skin. If I'm not using a beauty blender, they're great brushes just for cream contouring, but I said there I would mention them, honorable little mention. And then the final thing I want to talk about is another sponge. So I talked about that EX1 sponge. I love it. This one is a more detailed sponge. This one's filthy because I just used it again this morning. It's a small one from Real Techniques. It obviously swells up a lot bigger. This is great at getting right underneath the eye to blend out my concealer. I love this. It's great at getting around the nose to blend in any area that you just can't reach with a bigger beauty blender, around the mouth, chin. I just love this. And then I use this side because it's kind of like angled to bake and clean up the outer corner. Wow, I'm just after applying powder because there's still powder on it. Blend that off. But you can apply powder with this underneath the eye and bake with it. I just love a little sponge like this. I really, really recommend it. I love this sponge, but again, it's not an essential, but I do really, really like it. Guys, I am out of breath. I hope you enjoyed that video, and I hope you did find this video helpful if you are on the lookout for new brushes. I'm sorry this was a bit of a longer video, but I hope you enjoyed it nonetheless. And if you did, then give it a thumbs up. If there's any other videos you would like me to film in the near future, let me know. And I hope you have a fantastic day, and let me know what brushes from today that you are going to be picking up or that you didn't have in your collection and you're delighted to try out. And I will talk to all you guys in my next video. Bye.